I've spent decades working alongside nomads, walking with their flocks, eating in their tents, listening to their stories. And in all that time, one question kept rising. What really makes someone a nomad? In the Nomadic Peoples Network, we've settled on 5 traits: networking relationships, organized by clan structure, mobility as a community resource, autonomy for their group, and a distinct identity. But then something strange began to happen. I kept meeting people who had 4 of the 5, but not mobility. They still think in clans, still operate as networks, still see themselves as distinct, but they don't move, not as a community. That's when I realized we need a new category. These aren't nomads, they're something else. I call them no ads. And understanding each may change how we approach mission, community, and even church. Welcome to Let Nomads Move You, the podcast that takes you on a journey into the lives, cultures, and wisdom of nomadic peoples around the world. I'm Ron, your nomad guy. For over 30 years, I've walked alongside nomads, learning from their deep connections to Scripture, their heritage of mobility, and the lessons they offer for faith, community, and modern life. Trust me, it hasn't always been easy. I've made some painful mistakes along the way, but those experiences have transformed the way I see God, the world, and even my own faith. Each week, we'll uncover how the nomadic way of life can inspire you to rethink your worldview, reconnect with biblical themes, and find fresh purpose in a restless, often fractured world. So, if you're ready to let nomads move you, challenge your thinking, and ignite your faith, this is the podcast for you. Let's go. Hey friends, welcome back to Let Nomads Move You. I'm Ron, your nomad guide, and today's episode takes us one step farther. We're wrapping up our NOMAD series and introducing a new but related idea, the no ad. It's going to challenge how we think about missions, community, and maybe even the way we do church. Let's dive in. No ads? Where did that come from? Extended families ideally include mutual love and respect, loyalty, protection, and provision. It says, "This is who we are." For years, I've been working with people from around the world to define what it means to be a nomad. But through interviews with people across different countries, I kept encountering a pattern. I would present our working definition of nomads and ask a series of questions to determine whether a particular group fit the definition. Many among the Pashtun, for example, would respond, well, definitely networking relationships externally, organized internally by clan and tribe, sure. Autonomy is a super high value, and they definitely see themselves as distinct, but not on the basis of mobility. Many people move, but it is not a community resource. After hearing this kind of response many times, it became clear these groups aren't nomads. They are fully settled, both ethnically and sociologically. Individuals may be mobile, but that mobility is not considered a resource for or on behalf of the community. They are collectivists in general, but mobility is not part of that collective identity. The only missing element was mobility as a community resource. That realization led to this concept of noads. This insight raised a bigger question. Why are nomadic and formerly nomadic peoples still among the least reached to traditional mission strategies? That question has stayed with me ever since. The core of nomad identity. If you've been following our work, you know our working definition of nomads. It's built around 5 key characteristics: naturally networking. Relationships, both internal and external, are the foundation of survival and success. organized by clan. Social structures are based on extended family groups that provide identity and security. Mobility as a community resource. Movement is not just about individuals relocating, it is a strategy for survival, economy, and identity. Autonomous communities. The group functions as a unit, distinct from the outside world, valuing its own way of life. Distinct identity. Nomads see themselves as a people set apart from settled societies, often with a strong cultural heritage. In previous episodes, we've broken down each of these 5 characteristics and explored how they shape worldview, kinship, and spiritual understanding. But today, we turn our attention to what happens when just one of these traits, mobility, is missing. What happens when mobility isn't a community resource? Take away the M from nomad, and what do you have left? NOMADs. These are people who still embody the networking, clan based organization, group autonomy, and distinct identity, but they don't see mobility as a resource at the community level. That doesn't mean individuals don't move. Plenty of NOMADs travel, migrate, or relocate for work. But as a group, they don't rely on movement for survival, identity, or opportunity in the way that nomads do. Mobility is not embedded in their way of life. This is a crucial distinction for mission work. It changes everything about how trust is built, how leadership functions, how evangelism spreads, and how discipleship is sustained. Both nomads and no-ads often find our institutionalized, program driven models of church and mission confusing at best and alienating at worst. Examples of no-ads. Many groups that were once nomads have become no-ads over time. Some still carry the mindset of networking, clanship, and autonomy, but their mobility has diminished due to external pressures, government policies, land restrictions, economic changes, or even shifts in cultural priorities. Think of communities that were historically agropastoralist, service traders, or hunter gatherers. Some of them may now live in urban centers, but that alone does not define them. If they still think like nomads, still seeing mobility as a community resource, even if they do not actively use it, then they remain nomads by our working definition. However, if they still think like nomads, still seeing mobility as a community resource, even if they do not actively use it, then they remain nomads by our working definition. However, after multiple generations, often 4 or more, they may lose this aspect, and at that point, they would be considered no-ads. But many no-ads have no conscious historical connection to nomadic living. They have always been settled farmers or other village or urban workers. Movement was never an essential element for their collective survival. The difference between nomads and no-ads isn't just about where they live. At some point, they could well be neighbors. But it is about whether they view movement as a resource for or on behalf of the extended family community. So, why does this distinction matter? Understanding the difference between nomads and no-ads helps us engage with each type of community more effectively. But perhaps the biggest reason this distinction is relevant is because of what both nomads and no-ads have in common that makes them completely different from most of us in the so-called developed world. Who are we? Most of us who come from North America and much of Northwestern Europe are highly individualistic. Our relationships are based on personal choice rather than communal responsibility. We have nothing like clan or tribal identity, and almost no collectivist thinking. Certainly none that spans generations. Ironically, many of us are highly mobile, but that mobility has zero relevance to our community. In this way, we resemble NOADs, but only a little. Why? Well, for one, our North Atlantic cultural view of autonomy is really only about personal freedom. Over and over again, we tell each other it shouldn't matter what anybody else thinks. Just do and say what seems good to you. We also value being distinct. But again, our distinctiveness is purely individual. Me, myself, and I. I used to think this kind of individualism wasn't mentioned anywhere in the Bible. But then I realized that there is one statement that describes it perfectly. It appears a couple of times in the book of Judges, and it is not intended as a compliment. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. This radical individualism is a modern phenomenon. Sociologists recognize that our current style of extreme individualism is quite recent in human history. Perhaps, as Muslim historian Tamim Ansari suggested in his book Destiny Disrupted, it began with the Protestant Reformation. Whatever the case, it's a shift that has separated us from how most of humanity has lived and thought for thousands of years. It is also a shift from how people in most of Latin America, Africa, and Asia still think today. This divide isn't just sociological. It shows up in Scripture too. Let me take you into an event that reveals the tension and possibility between NOADs, and how God works in both. Let's take a look at a familiar biblical episode. Think about Abraham, Lot, and the priest king Melchizedek. In Genesis 14, Abraham hears that his nephew Lot has been taken captive. Lot had long merged his household into the urban life of Sodom, a nomadic society defined by fixed location, politics, and economics. The attackers? Likely a set of mobile tribal alliances from the east, nomadic invaders. When Abraham gets the news, he rallies 318 trained men born in his household, not hired hands, but clan-born allies. He also calls on his friends Mamre the Amorite and Mamre's brothers Eshcol and Aner, each head of his own tribe. These are fellow nomads who could well have had as many household members as Abraham. Why all this effort? Because Lot was the son of his elder brother Haran. In a nomadic and noadic world, that makes you responsible. You don't abandon family, you act. After the rescue, Abraham meets Melchizedek, king of Salem, a noadic leader who represents an entirely different kind of people. He brings bread and wine and blesses Abraham in the name of El Elyon, God Most High. And Abraham responds by honoring him with a tithe, a portion of the spoils of war. There's no power struggle, no cultural clash, just mutual recognition that God is at work. This moment between a mobile tribal chief and a settled priest king might just be one of the most important biblical examples of how God bridges cultures, and it should make us pause. This event demonstrates that not all nomads are good and not all settled noads are bad. It also reminds us that mission isn't always about movement or stability. Sometimes it's about recognition, about mutual blessing, about naming what God is doing in a way that honors both the mobile and the settled. What have we lost? For those of us in the so-called developed world, understanding nomadic and noadic thinking can help us grasp just how radically different we are from much of the rest of the world. It can also help us recognize what we've lost. We are not more civilized than these societies. In some ways, we are less. Nomads, even those who no longer move, still think of mobility as a community resource. They see relationships not just as personal connections, but as interwoven networks that strengthen the whole. Nomads may not have mobility as a key factor, but they still hold on to their collective identity, their clan based organization, and their autonomy as a people. Meanwhile, in much of North America and Europe, we've lost almost all of these things. We tell ourselves that individualism is progress, but is it really? Have we achieved something better or just given up something essential? Tamim Ansari, in the book mentioned earlier, suggests that this is the main reason his people, Muslims, reject Christianity. What do you think? I really do wish there had been a course on this when I was in college, or at least some kind of preparation before launching among nomads. It could have saved me a decade or more of grief, and it could possibly have saved my nomad friends a great deal of grief as well. But hey, that's exactly why we developed Nomad Connect, a course designed to help you connect deeply with the nomad worldview, both in scripture and personally within today's nomadic communities. It may even help you connect with noadic communities. It starts with a self paced digital course to prepare for 5 weeks of mentored interaction, camping, and walking with nomads somewhere in the world. Whether you're preparing for long term work among nomadic peoples or simply want to understand these communities better, Nomad Connect will equip you with the insights and tools you need to engage meaningfully and avoid common missteps. Learn more and sign up at nomadicpeoples.net/nomad-connect. Okay, let's keep this conversation going. This concept of no ads is still developing, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Are there groups you know that fit this description? How would you navigate your identity as compared to such people? Let me know in the comments. Let's dig deeper together. Sign up for Let Nomads Move You, a newsletter that helps us walk this journey together. Go to our website and sign up to explore more, and be sure to check out Nomad Connect, a place where we help people learn, connect, and engage with nomadic communities globally. Thanks for traveling with me on this episode of Let Nomads Move You. I hope it gave you a new way to see the world and your faith. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's journey. Until then, keep moving, keep learning, and stay with the shepherd.